one. Can you turn this down, please? This is one of the pleasantest duties that I have in the course of the year, and that is to introduce a presentation by Rumsfeld Fellows at the Central Asia-Caucasus Institute. Why is this such a delight? Because this group is a remarkable group. Every group that's come is remarkable, and their careers have just flourished, and not because of the Rumsfeld Fellowship Program, but not in spite of it either. These experiences have enriched them, but they've also enriched us. And I can tell you, this particular crew of fellows is just a wonderful gang. And they are as pleasant and charming and interesting in every way as they are competent in their various fields, which are highly diverse. So it's really the possibility of presenting each group of Rumsfeld Fellows is a true delight and honor that comes to me twice a year. And here we are. Now, today's subject is extremely important. Months ago, the Central Asia countries, as a group, and at the highest level, presidential level, agreed that they would no longer consider Afghanistan as an inconvenient neighbor, but as a member as part of Central Asia. Now, this is a real conceptual breakthrough. Doesn't mean that they're a convenient part of Central Asia. They're not yet, but it changes fundamentally how each party to this looks at the other. And our subject today is how Central Asians are actually, and might prospectively, help the development of Afghanistan. Not abstractly, but concretely. And we'll also hear from our chairwoman at today's gathering, we will hear how all this looks from the Afghan side, because that's very important. It takes two to tango. So we'll hear from both. And let me say, this is coming at a moment where I'm not happy to report. The most recent indications from Congress are deepening impatience with events in Kabul. Even frustration, whether it's warranted or not, I'll leave to each of you to judge, but that is certainly the mood. This has been reported in the last week in various not confidential, but private meetings around town. And this is why Mr. Khalilzad was sent there and to meet with the Taliban first. The circumstances of that meeting, I'm very sorry to report, were not very happy, and don't do a great credit to either party. But the reality is that right now we're in a phase when, unless the United States discovers some new and convincing reason for engaging and a new way of engaging, one might be very concerned about the future. Now, with that background, the decision by the Central Asians becomes all that more important. And what we're about to hear today is all that more important. And hence, we're grateful for this program. Now, our hostess to this program and chairwoman is Hadeia Amiry. She is a Badakhshani. We have two Badakhshanis here. It's quite wonderful. Hadeia, and from the other side, it's amazing that the Badakhshan is divided between Afghanistan And that these two wonderful women are from either side of that border is, to me, just, it shows how integrated the region really is. And Hadeia went to, got her education up to the MA level in Afghanistan. She spent many years in Tajikistan. So there we are again. Exactly. And returned to Afghanistan and then came here and got an MA from CACI and served in the embassy of Afghanistan here in Washington. And now she's in a new role, and that is as an advisor to the presidential advisor in Kabul on national security. So this is a significant new role. She's in a position to speak with some authority on the subjects before us. And if she can't, we have plenty of people, not least her husband, here who can help. So, it's up to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Starr. I think you have said a lot of stuff, which I'm very humbled and thankful for. Before starting and going to our very interesting discussion with my very talented fellows from CAMCA countries, I want to take a moment and thank you all for coming today here despite of the rain. It shows how committed and interested you are today to show up here for the prosperity and rebuilding of Afghanistan all together. Thanks for coming. As Dr. Starr said, I'm an Afghan. I'm an Afghan woman, and today Afghanistan, and especially the role of women that you can see today, we have come so far today. And without the support, without the assistance of international community, especially from our very neighboring countries, it wouldn't have been possible that we are what you see today. It is all the support of our friends and allies. We don't want to lose that because we have given all the sacrifice throughout the years during the war and after that. You know, we are not ready to give any sacrifice now. As Dr. Starr said, during the war, we were immigrated to Tajikistan and for some years to Uzbekistan. I guess I'm one of those people who appreciates and cherishes the value of being an immigrant, not to US, not to Canada, not to Australia, but to one of our own Central Asian countries who gave us a second home when we were forced out to leave our own homes from Afghanistan. And that was Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. That when I returned back to Afghanistan with so many inputs, I learned Russian. That is one of my very good things that I took back to my country, and I wanted to. Then I saw my country, how devastated we were. And now that we see where we come right now is something that we never want to give up our achievements. So we are again thankful for international community and our CAMCA region, especially our Central Asian countries, Mongolia and Armenia. With that, I should also thank my fellows from Foundation, Rumsfeld Foundation, to give me personally an opportunity to choose this topic as the main topic of our discussion today. So thank you so much. Thanks for showing commitment to rebuild our country. Today, I should say, whatever points that we will make is only our own opinions and not necessarily will represent our countries or organizations. So it will be everything from our side. I should also say that the geostrategic location of Afghanistan is very much important for Central Asian countries, for South Asia, and for the greater Central Asia, that we should never forget what is the geostrategic location of Afghanistan, and throughout the years, how that helped us or not for the prosperity of the countries around us. Also, one of the very important points that I think sometimes we as an Afghans and some of our other friends we forget is that without coordination, cooperation, assistance, and support of each other, we cannot go anywhere. And if we want to do something, if we want to have a prosperous country and a prosperous region, we definitely we should work together. East, west, north, and south, they will be all very much connected. And if they want to go to this part of the world where all of you represent us here, they should go through Afghanistan, except Mongolia, that I don't want to say that, but definitely they have to go through these countries. Today we have our representatives from Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Georgia, and other countries that they want to talk in depth about this discussion, and they want to show their own views, how they can rebuild our country up, how they can show their commitment to rebuild Afghanistan. They have done, throughout these years, they have worked shoulder by shoulder with Afghans. We have very, very good mega projects together, like TAPI, like CASA 1000, TAP, Lapis Lazuli Corridor, and many, many other mega projects that they have been already started, some of them, and we also want to hear from our very friendly countries that what next they can do for us to further connect this country with the region. With that, I should say that as Afghans, we have many, many priorities that we have set up. One of the very, very first priority for us as Afghans is security and peace. We all know that without security and peace, we cannot go anywhere. But let's not forget that we are losing a lot of opportunities as Central Asian countries, that we are considering security and peace of Afghanistan as a challenge for us, and not taking any risk to come to Afghanistan to invest, to have any cultural relations, to have any social relations. Using that as a risk or as a challenge for Afghanistan, we are kind of getting distance from this country, and this is the moment that other countries using this as an opportunity, coming to investing in Afghanistan, and using actually your opportunities as the neighboring countries. So what I urge our Central Asian countries to come, probably it will be a risk, it will not be very much safe, but it's a very good opportunity to work in Afghanistan, to invest in Afghanistan, and to get closer both culturally and socially with Afghans. Another very much important and very, I should say, another very good achievement that we already had, but still we are emphasizing and we are focusing on that, is good governance. By that we have to, I'm sure every one of you are very aware of the recent elections that we had in Afghanistan. If we compare the election of Afghanistan that we had this year compared to 2014, there were despite all the challenges that we had, but there were a lot of more commitment that we saw from our people, and the level of participation was much more than that. And we are eagerly, with all the challenges that we have, we went to elections and we want our country prosperous and peace. And that's one of the signs that our Afghans and our people never want to go back to the dark times of the year. So, with all that, I want to go and introduce one of our very prominent speakers that we will have today, who is Mr. Malik Mukhidinov. He's a program officer in JICA, and he is from Uzbekistan. Yes, please.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Mr. Malik, thank you so much for coming today here and for presenting Uzbekistan and other Central Asian countries. Could you please, as we know that peace building and rehabilitation of Afghanistan is very much important, not only for CAMCA countries, but for the whole globe. Could you please tell us how would you see Afghanistan? Do you think Afghanistan is part of conflict for us, for CAMCA region, or you would see it more as a solution for CAMCA region?
Thank you for the question, Hadeia. My short answer is yes, it's part of the solution, and let me explain my answer as well. You know that Central Asian countries and Afghanistan share common history, traditions, culture, and we also share our future common goals as well. And in Central Asia, we have a common understanding that peace building and reconstruction in Afghanistan should be Afghan-led and Afghan-owned, which basically means that external assistance should be provided upon request of Afghanistan. And at the same time, we in Central Asia, we always have been and remains committed to peace building and reconstruction in Afghanistan. For example, in 2017 and 18, when Kazakhstan was a non-permanent member of the Security Council in the United Nations, the government of Kazakhstan promoted this issue, peace building in Afghanistan, and recently, in March of this year, Uzbekistan also hosted a high-level international meeting on peace building in Afghanistan. That high-level meeting was co-chaired by presidents of Uzbekistan and Afghanistan. And back to 1990, 99, 2 years before 9/11, Uzbekistan also hosted another international conference on peace building in Afghanistan within the framework of such called Group 6+2. All neighboring countries participated at that meeting, as well as Russia and United States. And very important that at that meeting, representatives of the Northern Alliance and Taliban movement also participated at that meeting as well. So apart from that, Central Asian countries also implement very important infrastructure projects in Afghanistan as well, particularly in transportation sector and energy sector. For example, since 2002, Uzbekistan supplies electricity to Afghanistan. And very soon, Uzbekistan will commission new power generation line from Sulhan to Amiry down in Afghanistan. As to the transportation projects, you know that Uzbekistan also supported in terms of building railway from territory of Uzbekistan to Afghanistan, to Mazar-e-Sharif. Today it's the only railway in Afghanistan. But at the same time, Afghanistan, together with partners from Iran, built another railway from city of Haf in Iran to Herat. And Uzbekistan is going to implement another railway projects to connect Mazar-e-Sharif with Herat. So both these projects will make Afghanistan regionally connected. And also in the region we discuss other important transportation communication projects like Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Iran and Oman. And another one is Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, China. Implementation of those projects will create necessary conditions for development of intercontinental transportation routes. So implementation of all these projects can make Afghanistan as a regional hub. And another important issue is, of course, education and human resources development in Afghanistan, which can accelerate peace building and construction of Afghanistan. They really need human resources for implementation of such projects, and to make a difference in the country. Central Asian countries, Uzbekistan for example, in January of this year we established a training center for Afghan citizens in the south of Afghanistan, across the border with Afghanistan. And Uzbekistan is willing also to accept students from Afghanistan. And Kazakhstan already accepts students from Afghanistan. The government of Kazakhstan recently allocated $50 million grant for that purpose. And I think based on this collaboration and cooperation, both Central Asia and Afghanistan will succeed in those reforms which have been set by the government of Afghanistan. And also, I think I will conclude my answer at this point. If you look again at our facilitator from Uzbekistan, from Afghanistan, sorry. Yeah, she lived in Uzbekistan as well. She's the youngest member in our group, but one of the most educated persons. And I think that Afghanistan, with such bright and talented people, will succeed in implementation of all the reforms and make a difference in the country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Malik, for very kind words. I really appreciate that. I guess without regional connectivity and without working together, I don't think so. Neither Afghanistan and nor the Central Asian countries will go somewhere very far. And I guess it's worth to mention that Digital CACI is also one of the very, very important projects that World Bank, probably one of our friends, could talk more about that, which is worth of $55 million that we cannot close our eyes on. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Now, we know that Uzbekistan is one of those countries that play a very important role in peace building and peace talks, especially in the security section of Afghanistan. And we really appreciate the opinions from our friend from Uzbekistan on that. Now, our other friend from Georgia, from Tajikistan, Zarina Abdulalieva, she works for World Bank. She's a country officer in World Bank office in Tajikistan. Zarina, thank you so much for being here. As Dr. Star said, you're one of the Badakhshanis here that we are very, very proud of. And you very much represent the other side of the river. I think it's only one river that separates us. So thanks for coming, and there's a very huge potential for regional connectivity in Central Asia. Could you please tell us what are the perspectives of contribution from Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and also Mongolia, including regional initiatives? We would really want to hear your points on regional initiatives between these countries, because I'm very much sure that you have worked in World Bank and you very much technically can point out and highlight those points that we really want to hear from you. So please, floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon to everyone. For me, it's a great pleasure to be here and such a great honor to be at the same stage with Dr. Star, with Hadeia, with my colleagues, and especially that 10 years ago I was here research intern working with Professor Marin Weinbaum. So, get back to the topic. Tajikistan and Turkmenistan sharing a 1,400 and 700 kilometers border with Afghanistan respectively have a vital interest in stability and lasting peace in Afghanistan and have invested considerable political capital in developing good neighborhood relationship with Afghanistan. Increased trade investments with Afghanistan will offer a great promise of economic diversification, increased exports and security along the borders. And moreover, strategically, Afghanistan will offer strategic opportunities for transit to large markets in India, Pakistan, Iran, Turkey, as well as access to maritime trade through seaports in Pakistan. And of course, a number of large infrastructure projects, starting from energy transmission like Casavan Southern or TAP, gas pipelines, TAPI, to transport connectivity such as railway projects, and of course, together with the focus on expanding local cross-border trade with Afghanistan, reflects the importance that governments in Dushanbe and Ashgabat place on development of this very important bilateral relationship with Afghanistan. So, in overall, the key messages are investments, trade, security, infrastructure are the key drivers, and both Turkmenistan and Tajikistan in their bilateral relationship with Afghanistan focus on ambitious infrastructure projects in regional connectivity. Now, if you would allow, I would like to talk briefly about Tajikistan and Afghanistan relationship, which go back to ancient times and have been very close historically, and as you know, a lot of ethnic Tajiks live in Afghanistan. So, with family and linguistic ties across the border, the northern Afghanistan, in political terms, represents for Tajikistan an important security buffer, and economic terms, a very important market for farming products, food products, export of electricity, and providing of the basic public needs and services, including the health sector, which is already ongoing. So to start with, in 2017, the cross-border trade volume with Afghanistan has more than doubled to more than $100 million, making Afghanistan one of the key trading partners with Tajikistan. And electricity exports are seen as the staple in trade bilateral relationship with Afghanistan, especially given Tajikistan's considerable hydropower resources and investments ongoing in energy transmission, generation, and distribution. So, in 2017, in summer, Tajikistan exported about 1.3 billion kilowatt hours of electricity to Afghanistan, and amounting to over $50 million. And it is expected this energy export potential will be significantly increased with Casavan Southern project. And now, if you would allow, I would like to talk very briefly about this mega transformative project, which is supported by US government, UK government, the World Bank, Islamic Development Bank, European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, European Investment Bank, USAID, the FID, and a lot of partners and players. And it is the Central Asia, South Asia energy transmission project, which cost about $1.1 billion, and which links hydro exporting Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan to energy importing Afghanistan and Pakistan. The project was declared effective very recently in January, and it is ongoing with considerable progress achieved in procurement of the most infrastructure packages. So, in terms of the regional transport connectivity, there are ambitious plans made for developing Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, and Tajikistan railway, a tentative cost of about $350 million, which is supposed to link these three landlocked countries, and it is expected that it will give the potential to these countries for their transit, transport, and trade developments. And of course, we should not forget about cross-border local cooperation. There are dynamic movements, and it involves, first of all, farmers' markets, providing medical aid, student exchange, and also it aims at supporting the development of the micro and small enterprises. If you would allow, I would like also to talk very briefly about Turkmenistan and Afghanistan relationship. As you know, a lot of Turkmens also live in Afghanistan, and the Turkmen authorities contribute significantly to Afghan settlements in the border regions by providing electricity supply, regular shipments of foodstuff, and also building social infrastructure. And of course, very famous project, TAPI project, Afghanistan and Turkmenistan have finally agreed with India and Pakistan to build this mega project, which is estimated at about $8 to $10 billion tentatively. But this project faces several hurdles, including security concerns and lack of funding. In addition, the energy transmission and fiber optic communication lines, this project is called TAP, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, to be built across the pipeline, is expected to bring to Turkmenistan access to different alternative markets. And finally, briefly about Mongolia and the Afghanistan relationship. Political stability in Afghanistan is also very important for Mongolia. Since 2004, Mongolia has been providing peacekeeping operation forces to Afghanistan and training Afghan army, and Mongolian Expeditionary Task Force continues to be very important element to Kabul security forces as well as Mazar-e-Sharif, and it is willing to support and to bring more troops to the mission. And minority Hazaras in Afghanistan is believed to have some links to Mongols who ruled in 13th, 14th century, and very importantly, since 2009, a lot of Hazara Afghans in Mongolia who are settling mainly for education purposes are being increasing together with other Afghan refugees. And lastly, and very importantly, Mongolia as oasis of democracy, as it was stated once by John Kerry, can share with Afghanistan its experience of nurturing democracy. So in overall, this cooperation provides immense opportunities to expand cultural, economic, and trade relationship with Afghanistan and with our Central Asian countries. Thank you very much.
Zarina, thank you very much for giving us all the good news of the increase of export between Afghanistan and Tajikistan, and also very good information about Mongolians and Afghan Hazaras, that there is another opportunity for Afghans to have another country who is not very much located close to us, but there is also another friend who we can have as an opportunity to work with. We recently had very good news that was announced by World Bank Business Indicator that Afghanistan jumped 16 points higher and was announced as the top country reformers among other countries, which is a very good news for us as an Afghans in business world, I should say. And I guess it's a very good time for us, for Afghanistan, to give our private sector a chance to get the lead and start working together with our regional countries on the private sector mainly and in business. I guess giving a chance for private sector to start working with the regional countries in CAMCA, Mongolia, and Armenia is a very good chance for our investors and business people to open up the floor and open the floor a little bit bigger for them. Now let's move to our another very good friend, Natia, who is from Georgia. We also want to hear their inputs on Afghanistan, on how they could assist on the Afghanistan's rebuilding. Natia Gvenetadze, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your last name. She is head of professional and institutional development department, and she works for the Ministry of Defense of her country, Georgia. Natia, although the South Caucasus is not located very much close to Afghanistan geographically, and South Caucasus is not in the same proximity with Afghanistan and Central Asia, what do you think what are the areas of cooperation between these countries that you will be talking about today on the governmental level? Do you think Zarina talked a little bit on the private sector and how these mega projects could help Afghanistan to rebuild and to reconnect with the region. But what do you think, what we can do to reconnect Afghanistan on governmental level?
Yeah. Thank you. So, as you very well noted, although the South Caucasus countries are not located in the same proximity, of course, as the Central Asian countries are, all of the South Caucasian countries have both bilateral and multilateral formats and engagements with Afghanistan, and they very greatly contribute to the security and peace building of the country. So, to answer your question, Hadeia, I will very briefly talk about the cooperation with Afghanistan of Georgia and Armenia. I will cover Georgia and Armenia because our colleague will cover Azerbaijan. And on a governmental level currently, and then in the end I will try to give our recommendations to how those countries can contribute to rebuilding of Afghanistan in future as well. So allow me to start with Georgia, of course. As Hadeia in her introductory speech said that talked about the priorities of Afghanistan, one of the main priorities Afghanistan is having is to ensure security and stability of the country. So Georgia has its own share in supporting Afghanistan of rebuilding the security and stability. In 2004, Georgia started to participate in ISAF. It is, you all know, NATO-led security mission in Afghanistan by deploying 50 military personnel under the German contingent that was mainly to ensure the security of the Afghan elections that time. By 2012, the contribution to the ISAF mission amounted 1,600 military personnel that made Georgia the largest non-NATO contributor and the first per capita contributor after the United States. I also want to mention and highlight that Georgia deployed its forces to operate without national caveats, to conduct full-spectrum operations in the most difficult area of the mission. Today, Georgia is one of the largest troop contributor nations to the Resolute Support Mission, with 872 military personnel deployed without national caveats. I'm just highlighting it. Also, Georgia has financially supported the development of the Afghan National Defense and Security Forces, with giving the money in a trust fund of $2 million United States dollars. It was in the years of 2015-2018, and what is the most important to highlight is that the government of Georgia has pledged to continue this financial assistance throughout 2018-2020. Despite active engagement in international missions, Georgia has become part of the Lapis Lazuli corridor that you have already mentioned, a transit route which is a trade and transport route that connects Europe to South and Southeast Asia. That is very important part because we believe that this route will make even more connections of the countries that are joins and sign this corridor mission. And what is more important, that Georgia is rebuilding its port, which is a central and major port that would connect the corridor that's connecting Afghanistan to the Europe and bringing goods from Afghanistan to Europe. So now let me also discuss about the cooperation that Armenia has with Afghanistan on governmental level. The political elites of Armenia, both before the revolution and current ones, stress the importance of participating in international peacekeeping missions, although they have their own challenges security-wise. So Armenia was a troop contributor in ISAF and also continues to having its own troops in the Resolute Support Mission in Afghanistan to provide further training, advice and assistance to the Afghan security forces and institutions. As of September 2018, Armenia has 121 military personnel in Afghanistan. Although Georgia and Armenia have enjoyed close partnership cooperation within the scope of ISAF and Resolute Support Mission, our bilateral cooperation in political, economic, and cultural spheres still needs to be intensified. Looking into the future, there are a number of areas that both Georgia and Armenia could contribute to further development of Afghanistan besides engagement in the engagement they are in today, to say shortly. So alongside to the recognition of the top reformer in the world, Georgia is a leader in the wider region in fighting with corruption. The corruption index in Georgia is lower even in some of the, compared to some of the European countries. So Georgian experts are regularly invited to share their experience and expertise and knowledge related to different aspects of building integrity processes to different countries. We do it with Ukraine and Kazakhstan. And we could share our experience in building integrity initiatives like sending our experts to support human resources, building integrity curricular development to raise awareness and knowledge how to fight corruption. Also, building integrity, of course, encompasses internal audit and the state procurement, where Georgian experts could be very professional and supportive to Afghanistan. In 2012, Georgia has provided artillery instructors to train Afghan National Army artillery personnel. So that could be continued again, so that has happened twice only. And of course, if there is a will from Afghanistan, Georgia could contribute to artillery trainings. And besides only having the artillery trainings, Georgia could be a good example and supporter to develop professional military education system in Georgia, starting from BCT, basic command training, to the NCO and officers education. Also, besides, I would like to highlight that Georgia has a PFP accredited center, Hadeia Mountain Training Center, where it could offer the slots to the Afghan national security forces to come and engage in international summer and winter mountain trainings in Georgia. Moreover, as you all know, Georgia has conducted a number of successful reforms that could be shared with Afghanistan, not only in terms of security, but also in regards of institutions building, sharing our experience in economic stand and institutional reforms. Now talking about Armenia. One of the areas Armenia could contribute to the revival of Afghanistan is to share its success stories, how to empower women in politics, because the country made a significant progress by 14 points in a global gender gap in 2017 compared to 2016. So this is to equip women with the proper skills of the leadership and policy making to go to the governmental jobs they can lead. Another way that Armenia can contribute is an open government partnership, which is very interesting initiative, and Afghanistan is part of it actually. However, Armenia had very big progress and even won the top award among the countries of the Asian South Pacific region, and that is that Armenia is open like to have more transparent and accountable government to its citizens. So other spheres that Armenia can potentially contribute to the revival of Afghanistan are social entrepreneurship, promoting civil society organizations, startups, also particularly in IT spheres. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Natia. I think you have mentioned very, very interesting and important points. I think investing on human capital is one of the important things and one of the very prominent investment that we could do between countries, especially working on the military sections and military sectors and helping our national security forces as a model, and so we could use your stories as a model for our own military forces. Thank you for sharing that. And I think, I'm sure most of our friends, we know that we share a lot of institutions together with Central Asian countries. We are part of so many regional institutions together that I think we can use that platform as one of the way outs and one of the successful ways to get our voice heard. We have RICA, we have CARIC, we have part of Asia, and we have SCO and many other Trasica and many other regional platforms that we are part of, which probably is one of the best things that we are part of that, and we still can emphasize and work on that together. So now let's move to Azerbaijan, and let's hear from our friend from Azerbaijan that what they have and how they think they can help Afghanistan, and how they think that they can work with us to rebuild Afghanistan and the region. So Rufat Abbasov, he is a very successful entrepreneur. He runs a PR and marketing company in Azerbaijan, as very leading companies in his country. Rufat, during the past decade, Azerbaijan continuously supported Afghanistan in many ways, especially on sustainable statehood. So can you please elaborate a little bit more on the state of commitment of Azerbaijan to Afghanistan, especially if you would highlight the private sector's commitment and support to Afghanistan, and what you have already done for our country, what you want to do, and what projects or what current projects are going on between these two countries, specifically on private sector. We will be happy to hear that from you.
Good evening, everybody. I can promise that my speech will be shorter than your question. I have good news. I'm a last speaker. I usually hate last speakers, especially those ones who say that I'm the only one between you and drinks, since they are not too much drinks. So I will quote one American cartoonist who said that my job is to talk, your job is to listen. Since you will finish first, just let me know. I don't want to repeat my fellow colleagues. They gave out very detailed information about what our countries and our region did for Afghanistan. Azerbaijan, as the only Muslim country in Caucasus and which had a good relations with Afghanistan, contributed and supported Afghanistan in all these mentioned spheres, starting from the lovely topic of Natia's ISAF. We started from 2002. We have troops in Afghanistan. We are supporting peace in this lovely country. Hundreds, maybe thousands of Afghan diplomats, civil workers, medics, mine action specialists have trainings in our countries. We have special scholarship for hundreds of Afghan students. We gave more than $10 million to Afghan National Army Trust Fund. Also, we are supporting Afghanistan with the access to European market. Since this corridor with intrigue name Lapis Lazuli come to operational, the delivery time of Afghan food goods to Europe market was shortened up to 5 days, which is really amazing. But I don't want to speak too much about this. I want to highlight some areas I think I think the huge potential on cooperation between Afghanistan and Azerbaijan. One of these areas is construction. Most of you have been to Baku and you saw the huge construction projects realized in my capital, in my city, starting from Zara Hadith building and with airport. Our construction companies are very cheap in compare with European and Americans, and quite professional, and they can help Afghanistan on rebuilding and reconstruction their destroyed buildings. Road construction, we are very good on road construction. Our companies won tenders in Ukraine, Serbia, Romania, Georgia, and other Eastern European countries, and they can construct cheaper and more quality roads than Chinese do. SOCAR, one of the SOCAR support. SOCAR is the CAMCA is the biggest oil and gas company from CAMCA, and this is SOCAR's building. And thanks to SOCAR that we have this venue. And but SOCAR has a huge experience on experience on geophysical works in Siberia, in Iraq, in not Iran, thanks God, but in Azerbaijan, in Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, and in several countries. I forgot the name of the all countries, and they are all works are very experienced and professional, and we are proud of our oil history. And I think that SOCAR can support Afghanistan in oil and gas exploring. I love this topic, the cultural cooperation. We proudly mention all the time that the first opera and ballet in Muslim world was created by our composer Hadeia. In 1970s we helped Iraq founding the opera and ballet theater. We can help Afghanistan on founding and creating and developing their cultural institutions. Education is another area where we can collaborate. And I just saw here this interesting book with the name Azerbaijan's Formula Secular Governance. We also proud that 100 years ago we founded first democracy in Muslim world, and we have rich experience on secular governance. And this is another Afghanistan name is Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, but we can share our experience on secular governance with Afghan brothers and sisters. So as promised, it's short, and since nobody raised hand, I think you listened to all my speech. Thank you. And we are, as a team, and with our photographer from Armenia, ready for questions. Thank you.
Rufat, thank you so much for very interesting points that you have made here today. I think one of the very important points that Rufat mentioned, and I want to highlight that and emphasize that, is for our countries, for the CAMCA region countries, it's very important that we should, at this point, highlight and work a little closer on 3 points, which, in my opinion, is very vital for us. I would very much appreciate to see our countries to work more on cultural and sports diplomacy. We have a lot of things in common between our countries, politically, socially, religiously, language, ethnicity, and all those stuff. I think at some point there was some emphasis on some of these factors. But let's work a little closer together on the cultural diplomacy, like Nowruz and other festivals and cultural issues that we have together. I think that's one of the very good points, that we can bring these countries more closer together. And we can also work on sports diplomacy with the CAMCA region countries. We call it Buzkashi. I think all of you know what is Buzkashi, and that's one of the local games for all the regional countries like Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Azerbaijan, and other countries. And Nowruz festival is, interestingly that I learned, is celebrated in half of the Mongolia, that one of my friends told me. So these are the 2 very prominent and very important points that we can highlight and work on the cultural and sports diplomacy. With all that I say, I also want to finish my points with one little homework for our friends from CAMCA regions. And that's one of the suggestions that as an Afghan I would have. It's very important for us to work together. I would really love to see all of us to work on the private sector. We have a lot of things to share in the private sector. And I would suggest if we could when we go back to our countries, if we can think and we can go to our governments, talk to them. We can be the ambassadors of our own countries and bring out one opinion, which will be the Chamber of Commerce for CAMCA Region, to have a secretariat for within one of the countries that we have. We can have, I mean, that's my personal opinion, that probably you can work more about that if you like. But I would really love to see if we can work together to bring up a Chamber of Commerce, not for one country, not for two countries, but for CAMCA Region. And we probably can have a secretariat in one of the regions to bring these countries closer in terms of private sector. With that, I want to thank you all for presentation and for hearing us, and also before saying, opening up the room for questions, I want to ask my rest of the fellows to stand one by one, because we are 11 here and we just saw 5 of us. So I want to start with Mugi just to introduce themselves, and so if there's any questions for us and for the rest of the group, they're very much happy to support.
Hi everyone. I'm Mugi. I'm a fellow from Mongolia. I work for the government of Mongolia.
Good evening. I'm Lola from Uzbekistan, and I'm running the investment consultancy services company in Uzbekistan.
Hello, my name is Emerald, and I'm also from Mongolia. I work for the railway company in Mongolia, it's a state-owned company. We'd be happy to connect a railway to the region. It's my dream.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Anna. I'm from Armenia. I have been with a research institution in Armenia for about 15 years, supporting social science research in Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia.
Hi, my name is Ruslan. I'm from Kazakhstan. I work for private university in Kazakhstan.
Thank you, everyone. With that, I also want to thank Rumsfeld Foundation for giving us this platform and bringing us all together and giving us an opportunity to make new friends from our regional countries, and hopefully we could be in touch and work together in the future. And thank you, Dr. Fred. It was a very happy moment and an honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to begin by recognizing our former fellow, but you're not a former fellow, you're a fellow for life, Farooq from Uzbekistan.
Usually I can speak without mic, but okay, let's take it this way. Thank you very much for a nice tour to the bazaar, basically, where all traders actually showcase their fruits, vegetables, crops, and yields, saying how they can actually contribute to the revival and rebuilding of Afghanistan. Basically, the only thing remains after this to Afghanistan to go and shop around. But the question is, what does Afghanistan really need? What does Afghanistan really want in that regard from individual countries and from the region as a whole? Does it see the region as a whole? And I'm talking from Afghanistan point of view. So basically, I'm wrapping up.
No, I'm not cutting you off.
The thing is, so I'm trying to understand whether Afghanistan is driven by a bilateral agenda or with the regional agenda. Also, I'm very much curious to learn what the people, the grassroots organization, think about it. Do they in line with the government of Afghanistan's strategy with regard to the CAMCA region? Thank you.
I'm going to, we have a representative of the Afghan embassy here who happens conveniently to be a former fellow.
Please.
No? Okay.
He went away from the moment they started speaking.
Looking forward.
Thank you for your question. I think I don't want to specify just one or 2 points. Earlier, I pointed out a few priorities of Afghanistan. That we need a lot of things, but we have to also prioritize that what exactly we need as bilateral or multilateral. As I mentioned before, we are part of many institutions together with regional countries, especially with CAMCA, that we together can work more together, but as a priority for us and as a first thing that our friends from Georgia, they have worked at this section is peace and security for us. you're from Uzbekistan, and I'm sure you know that Uzbekistan lately is very much active in terms of peace and in the aspects of peace and security in Afghanistan. So that's one of the points that we certainly want to work more on that, and that's in the priorities of Afghanistan. Thank you.
Floor is open. Yes, sir.
I'm Bill Field. I'm President Emeritus of the U.S. Kazakhstan Business Association, which I ran for 15 years until 4 years ago. I heard yesterday the economic and finance advisor to the President of Afghanistan, and it was a very interesting talk. A lot of progress was revealed in that. But he said something absolutely startling, that the banks in Afghanistan are not lending money. And that there is he suggested that there was a reason for this. Part of it seemed to be the Kabul bank failure. But this seems to cast a shadow over the readiness to lend money to people. And it seems to me that the security problem that you face in Afghanistan could be addressed from the bottom up as well. And that is by promoting small and medium-sized enterprises that would soak up some of the labor that's being attracted by the Taliban. And in order to do that, you need to have funding and access to credit. Now, I know from my experience in Kazakhstan that the access to credit in Central Asia for small and medium-sized companies is a real problem. It's done fitfully in some countries and has made some progress. But I would suggest that when you and your other fellows go back, that you look at this problem and see if there isn't a way to address that. And more precisely, I would wonder if there isn't part of the aid programs of the countries in your group here might think about microfinance. I think Zarina mentioned microfinance briefly in passing. But I think that this is something that really needs a broad look at and attention in order to think about ways to get small and medium enterprises soaking up labor.
Before we have any response, can I ask Kash in the back there, who happens to have served a number of years in Afghanistan in the development area and is now senior official at USAID.
What do you want me to talk? Anyway, I think on the microfinance issues, we do have several projects in Afghanistan and also something called Development Credit Authority, a part of the USAID that works primarily on that issue, so one can talk a little bit more about it. But I just wanted to comment on two things that Ms. Amiry mentioned, and I just wanted to second them pretty forcefully. One, this notion of having a Chamber of Commerce at the last meeting, they talked about a business forum. So this has been coming up through every generation of the fellows, to this identification that there ought to be a private sector part of the CAMCA forum. And I think it'd be great if you took that forward, and there's a lot of support, and I think a lot of support from some of the institutional donors as well. So I think you need to, we've talked about it, this has been mentioned at every CAMCA fellow generation. I hope this is the one that makes it happen, but it'd be good if you did make it happen. The second one is that you mentioned about the cultural exchange. And it may be something worth looking at the Visegrad countries, the 4 Visegrad countries, the Hungarian, Czechia, Romania, those set of countries. They've talked something about a shared cultural landscape and conserving the shared cultural landscape. So it's not just the environmental aspect, but also the livelihoods, the pastoral movements from Mongolia all the way down to Kazakhstan, to Afghanistan, and over to Azerbaijan. So this CAMCA cultural landscape idea would also be very, very potent and something that you may take it together from anything from Nang happening in Mongolia to all the events of CACI and others. And the third issue that came up a lot from hearing the fine, outstanding fellows presentation, and I think a good analogy was the bazaar one. It should not be limited in how you define the connectivity only in physical terms. So you mentioned the digital CASA. You could make it a cultural connection. You could make it a cultural So whatever it would be, I think it would be nice to form these as your Chamber of Commerce that gives your region a shape and a formation. So I think that would be outstanding. And again, it's always an honor to be here. And I think for us, Central Asia is an important area, and CAMCA is the most exciting thing happening in that part of the world. So thanks again.
Thank you. Right down here.
I just have a quick comment. My name is Hamid Arslan. I am actually, my family, we have a small business in Afghanistan. I think with regard to your question of banks not giving loans basically for the private companies, I think it's a little bit inaccurate because as a business owner in Afghanistan, we do have access to finances. I think after the incident of Kabul Bank, it made it a little bit more difficult, basically, to get more finances. We are asking for more sureties to make sure that if you get a loan from the bank, that loan actually does not kind of default. So I think that process does exist in Afghanistan from the private banks. You can get loans. The interest may be a little bit higher than somewhere probably an institution here in the United States. But I think the businesses, they do have access to that.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Just to follow up on, the Development Credit Authority at USAID is basically a loan guarantee program. And it functions primarily with that particular note. Where you have parts of the market and parts of the society which the lender does not feel very secure in lending, but it finds that the due diligence there would be a response. Development Credit Authority goes in, like for women-run businesses or any of the others. So they would go to the bank and say, would you please look for and extend your credit to this community. We will back it up in loan guarantee for you as you do it. So that addresses this particular issue. Any one of you can go to your USAID mission director, and the term is DCA, Development Credit Authority.
Good, yes, over here.
Thank you, Coach.
This side.
Yes. Thank you. First of all, thank you to the
Could you stand, please?
Yeah. Thank you very much to the fellow for the wonderful presentation. And my question is actually related to the development, to the issue of development of Afghanistan. So maybe you have recommendation or any thoughts. My question also for you, Hadeia.
Sure.
Maybe you have any thoughts or recommendation regarding to the issue of opium and poppy cultivation in Afghanistan? Because as we know, Afghanistan is one of the largest producers of the opium, and maybe countries of the CAMCA region could help to Afghanistan somehow to handle this issue, or maybe Afghanistan knows how to do it itself. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. I just will be brief. In Tajikistan, together with Afghanistan, we are establishing very good cooperation between law enforcement agencies to ensure that everything goes smoothly. It's according to the official information, and if my colleagues would like to add anything, but cooperation is really strengthening to address any security concerns along the borders.
May I respond on that also? I've been at 50 gatherings in the last 2 decades in which this question has been raised. No one has made the obvious point that opium is a consumer product. And if you want to solve the problem, go to the consumers. Where is the demand for Afghan opium? It's in Russia and Northern Europe. As soon as that stops there, it'll end. However, the problem is they're afraid to do anything. And it had nothing, very little has been done. As I was told in Vienna, at the what is the organization? situation.
UNODC.
UNODC. They were all sitting around the table, and the guys who are paid his salary to deal with this issue, and they said, look, I said, why aren't you dealing with the consumer, the man? And they said, we have families.
And the Director General of UNODC is Russian.
I want to make a comment and then we will go to our other friends. That was one of the perspectives that you can see a lot of demand from other countries for opium in Afghanistan. But as Dr. Fred said, according to the demand, there is supply. So, and then there are consumers, that's why there are a lot of demand. That's from other, I want to talk a little bit from other perspective, from domestic perspective, that sometimes it's helping to increase the production of opium in Afghanistan. We don't have a very strong financial or economic situation right now or in the past few years, which fortunately it's increasing and it's growing day by day. But still, in some part of the country, that Taliban is still ruling or still have some sort of influence. They force people or farmers not to grow, for example, plants or other sort of agricultural stuff. They force them to grow opium so that they can use it for their own selves. And that's one of the source of revenue for them. So that could be one of the four factors helping this. Thank you.
Yes, sir, right there.
Thank you. I actually I don't need a mic. I'm okay. Thank you. I wanted to respond to the gentleman from the Kazakhstan Chamber of Commerce. The banking institutions are restricted in Afghanistan for a multitude of factors. That being said, that is being offset by grant money coming in from USAID and other donors. So one program such as Abadi just ended, and they were giving grants to qualified businesses. There's two more very large similar projects coming out in 2019, so if we have any small Afghan businesses here in the audience, they should take advantage of it. And actually the firm that I'm with right now, we're implementing one program working to revive the carpet sector in Afghanistan, which is very historic. And we have a pool of seed funding that we distribute to small and medium-sized enterprises, especially those that are run by women, to help them develop and grow. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
You very modestly didn't mention the name of the firm.
Oh, it's Oxus Group?
Oxus, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Didn't want to deny you that chance. Yes.
I want to just say something again at the risk of being fact-checked on this too. I was also told yesterday, heard yesterday, that the agricultural bank in Afghanistan was disbanded in 2003 by because of the pressure from the international community. And the impact that this has had on farmers is that they don't have money to fund their crops. And so along comes the Taliban and says, we'll give you money and loan you money for 6 months to get your opium crops started. And that's basically what's been going on. And there's not another, if you will, credit window for farmers to go to. And so they're basically being financed by some sort of Taliban financing. So I would appreciate your comments on that.
Thank you, Bill. I think from 2003 until now it has been 15 years, and in these 15 years we have come very long and very far. There was the fact that in the initial years there was some sort of assessment and aid by the Taliban, not for all of the farmers that we have in the country, but for some that they saw probably there's more opportunity to be part of the insurgent organization, to have some sort of certainty for their families and revenue, but not for all. I should emphasize on that. And that has been changed from day to day, and it has 15 years passed, and today it's not the case. Although I also should mention that the security is also playing a very vital role in this issue. So yeah, Taliban has some influence, but not all. Thank you.
I would like to turn to our fellow from Kyrgyzstan, because it's barely been mentioned, and except as an exporter of hydroelectric power. And yet, I know very well continuing fellows over a decade from Kyrgyzstan are very, very sharp businessmen. Are they thinking along these lines? And others?
Good morning, good evening, everyone. My name is Nurullah. In terms of business, and I think this is a twofold thing that Kyrgyzstan has been helping Afghanistan. It's first, it's education. Up to 100 students coming every year from Afghanistan to study in various universities in Kyrgyzstan. And I think by cultural bridge we are helping the same way as financial, for example. And I know that certain local companies also exporting cement, which is in demand in Afghanistan, very in high demand. And we have several cement factories in Kyrgyzstan which are well equipped to not only supply domestically but also internationally. So I know that some of them are supplying them. Well, other than that,
are they going to build there?
Not that I know of, but I think this is a good opportunity for our businessmen to go there, provided they are tolerant to the security risks they will be facing. This is something for our business to decide. But I think it's very important to mark your place in the market, because Afghan market is very interesting to the whole region, and I think we have a priority right to go there because we're neighbors, and it's very important to be there as one of the first.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nurullah.
Any further comments? Well, I want to say this has been, for me, an extremely interesting session. Let me raise in conclusion a question that's hung unasked in the air, but it seems to me is essential, and that is when. If you travel around this country, Europe, Asia, Central Asia, Caucasus, everyone says, "Oh yeah, this is a great idea. Let's go." And as soon as there's peace, in other words, that thesis says somehow you have to everything's peaceful and quiet, and then I move. Well, there are two problems with that. First of all, that's a formula for doing nothing. And second, it guarantees that you will not be the pioneer. And the reality is that peace and development, or peace and development, or to put it slightly differently, that the struggle against violence and so on has to go on simultaneously as investment and projects. And if you don't have any capacity for risk, you're not going to look at this. I mean, very few established major Western firms and Eastern firms, the big ones, have leaped into Afghanistan because their tolerance for risk is very low. On the other hand, there are plenty of people around Central Asia and the Caucasus who know how to deal with risk, who are able to go in now and find islands and places where they can work safely and productively and make money for the local economy. And that's what's needed. And so it's not waiting for peace and then we act. That'll never work. Second point, and that is the people who are most likely to do what I just suggested, namely go in when there is still risk. There isn't equal risk all over the country. You can travel all over large areas of Afghanistan the same way you would anywhere. I mean, then people forget that. It's a very big country, especially if you iron it out, by the way. That is, the people most likely to go in under these, not high risk, but risk situations are smaller businesses. And it's the private sector. And I think if there's any, it's not a criticism, but if we hold this same discussion a year from now, I guarantee you there will be much more discussion about private sector and especially smaller businesses than there is today. We're still at the stage where we're thinking in terms of governmental programs. And that isn't really where the action is going to be. It's going to be from clever people in neighboring countries and not neighboring countries who see an opportunity and very cleverly figure out find one of these islands where you can do things relatively securely and start their businesses and start putting money in the pockets of Afghans as an alternative to drugs. So I would say that the great question for the future is the private sector. And you were right to stress that in the case of Azerbaijan. It needs to be stressed in the case of every country because there is a private sector in Afghanistan. There are very good business people there. Chambers of commerce are really loaded with people who we could fill this fellowship program with people from those chambers of commerce. They're really good. Now, finally, two points. One is, I think the issue of sports and other forms of communication, interaction, grossly neglected. These are easily set up. It's very interesting. Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan and Uzbekistan have had closed borders for 25 years, and the next day, after these borders are open, they're talking about regional sports events, which, by the way, we proposed in a book on Fergana Valley a decade ago. But that's working. It's happening. And it produces miraculous relationships that go way beyond sports. So I'm going to just back you up on that. Finally, 2 points. We hope very much that the fellows of this group will, when you return home, you will report on this question. However you choose to do it. Whatever tone, whatever slant, whatever information, but raise the question publicly about the possibility of especially private sector investing in Afghanistan. You can have a big impact. If every one of you were to write something in a prominent national paper on this, people will then call you up and say, well, is that really possible? And you can put them in touch with our whole big gang of Afghan fellows who really know this world. And finally, this whole idea of a region, whether it's Central Asia and its now expanded form, including Afghanistan, or if it's leaping the Caspian, as we've heard, as it's happening increasingly, and engaging the Caucasus countries as well, and maybe even leaping to the east and engaging Mongolia as well. However you define it, there is going to be, I think we can at this point be confident, there's going to be an organization. It's going to have an institutional identity. And the Central Asia-Caucasus Institute will be releasing in a week or two an analytic paper that considers the 4 most prominent models for regional interaction, namely ASEAN, the Nordic Council, Visegrad, and the Mercosur in South America. And the researcher for this is sitting right here on it. acknowledge your work on it. But this paper goes into this in considerable detail. What are the pluses and the minuses of each of these organizations? How do they have to be modified, adapted, and so on? And again, none of them are talking about, notice the word hasn't been used today, integration. That's what Putin talks about, integration. And that is basically the EU model. Basically, which means a partial sacrifice of sovereignty. They're talking instead about, as you said in your introductory comments, coordination and cooperation. They're trying to find the right vehicle for coordination and cooperation. And right now, that's the urgent challenge. And if that happens, then your CAMCA Chamber of Commerce will exist and so on, and all these other things will come in. So that's a very lively question. I urge you to take a look at this paper when it comes out. It'll be on our website. We'll print it. We're printing it right now, I think in Latvia. Now, with that, I want to thank all of you for coming very much and ask you to join me in saluting this wonderful group of fellows who did such a superb job this afternoon. An announcement.
We have some wine and cheese over here.
Georgia.